I stood in front of the mirror, smoothing down my dress for the 100th time. The restaurant reservation was in an hour, and Travis had promised this would be a special night. My stomach fluttered with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Samantha, you ready?" Travis called from the living room. "Just a minute." I took a deep breath, grabbed my purse, and stepped out. Travis whistled appreciatively. "Wow, babe, you look stunning." I smiled, drinking in his appearance. He was dressed in a sharp suit, his sandy hair perfectly tousled. "You clean up pretty well yourself." He grinned, that charming, boyish grin that had first caught my attention 3 years ago. "Shall we?" He offered his arm, and we headed out. The restaurant was upscale, with soft lighting and white tablecloths. As we perused the menu, I couldn't help but wonder about the occasion. "Travis, what's all this about?" I asked, curiosity getting the better of me. He reached across the table, taking my hand. "Can't a guy treat his girl to a nice dinner?" I raised an eyebrow. "Of course, but you've been acting mysterious all week." He chuckled. "Always the detective, aren't you? Let's order first, okay?" Throughout dinner, Travis kept the conversation light, regaling me with stories from his latest business trip. I found myself relaxing, enjoying the evening. As we finished our dessert, Travis suddenly grew serious. "Sam, these past 3 years have been amazing." My heart began to race. Was this going where I thought it was? "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me," he continued, reaching into his pocket. "I can't imagine my life without you." He pulled out a small velvet box and got down on one knee. The other diners around us fell silent. "Samantha Marie Cooper, will you marry me?" I stared at the sparkling diamond ring, my mind whirling. This was it, the moment I'd dreamed of, yet somehow never quite believed would happen. Travis, my free-spirited, adventure-loving boyfriend, was proposing. "Sam?" Travis prompted, a hint of nervousness in his voice. I realized I'd been silent for too long. "Yes," I breathed. "Yes, I'll marry you." The restaurant erupted in applause as Travis slipped the ring on my finger and pulled me in for a kiss. Later that night, as we lay in bed, reality began to set in. "We're getting married," I murmured, still in disbelief. Travis pulled me closer. "I can't wait to start our life together." I hesitated, then voiced the concern that had been nagging at me. "Travis, you know I love you, but are you sure you're ready for this? Marriage is a big step." He propped himself up on an elbow, looking down at me. "Sam, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You're the one who grounds me, who makes me want to be a better man." His words warmed my heart, but a small part of me still worried. Travis had always been the spontaneous one, while I was the planner. Could we really make this work? As if reading my thoughts, Travis said, "I know I've been a bit of a wild card, but I'm ready to settle down, with you." I smiled, pushing my doubts aside. "I love you, Travis." "I love you too, Sam. Always." The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee. Travis was in the kitchen, attempting to make breakfast. "Morning, fiancé," he said with a grin, presenting me with a slightly burnt piece of toast. I laughed, kissing him on the cheek. For effort. As I sipped my coffee, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my best friend, Lisa. "Heard the news. Can't believe Travis finally popped the question. Call me ASAP." I was about to reply when Travis's phone rang. His face lit up as he answered. "Mom, yes, she said yes." I froze. I'd completely forgotten about Travis's mother, Mabel, the woman who'd never quite warmed up to me, who always seemed to find fault with everything I did. As Travis chatted excitedly with his mother, I felt a knot forming in my stomach. What had I gotten myself into? I smoothed my wedding dress one last time before stepping out of the dressing room. My heart raced as I walked down the aisle, Travis beaming at me from the altar. Despite my lingering doubts, I pushed them aside. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Fast forward 6 months, and I found myself staring at our joint bank account, my stomach in knots. "Travis," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can you come here for a second?" He sauntered into the room, still in his pajamas despite it being well past noon. "What's up, babe?" I pointed at the screen. "Care to explain this $500 charge at the golf course?" Travis shrugged. "Just a guy's day out. No big deal." "No big deal?" I echoed, incredulous. "Travis, we're supposed to be saving for our future. Remember the house we talked about?" He waved his hand dismissively. "Relax, Sam. We've got plenty of time for all that boring stuff." I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. This isn't the first time, Travis. Last month it was that expensive watch, before that. Geez, are you keeping tabs on me now? Travis interrupted, his tone sharp. I thought we were partners, not warden and prisoner. His words stung. That's not fair, I'm just trying to be responsible. Travis's face softened. He pulled me into a hug. I'm sorry, babe, I know you're looking out for us. I'll try to be better, okay? I nodded, wanting to believe him. But a nagging voice in my head whispered that this conversation was far from over. Later that week, I was struggling with groceries when our neighbor, Edward, appeared out of nowhere. Need a hand? He asked, his warm smile instantly putting me at ease. That would be great, thanks, I said gratefully. As we walked to my apartment, Edward chatted easily about the neighborhood. I found myself relaxing, laughing at his jokes. Where's Travis? Edward asked as we reached my door. I hesitated. Oh, he's out with friends. Edward's eyebrow raised slightly, but he didn't comment. Well, if you ever need help again, don't hesitate to ask. That's what neighbors are for, right? I smiled, touched by his kindness. Thank you, Edward. I really appreciate it. That night, I confronted Travis about his absence. You said you'd be home to help with errands today. Travis looked up from his phone, annoyed. Something came up at work. I texted you. No, you didn't, I said, checking my messages. I had to lug everything myself. If Edward hadn't... Edward? Travis's eyes narrowed. What's he got to do with this? I explained about the groceries, surprised by Travis's reaction. He was just being neighborly. Travis scoffed. Yeah, I bet he was. Look, Sam, I don't like you hanging around other guys. I stared at him, shocked. Are you serious right now? He's our neighbor, Travis, and maybe if you were around more. Oh, here we go again, Travis groaned. You know what? I'm going out. Travis? Wait, but he was already gone, slamming the door behind him. I sank onto the couch, fighting back tears. This wasn't how I imagined married life would be. Travis's charm, once so alluring, now felt like a mask hiding something darker. The next morning, I woke to find Travis's side of the bed empty. A text from him read, Crashed at Mike's. See you tonight. I sighed, getting ready for work. As I left the apartment, I ran into Edward again. Morning, Samantha, he said cheerfully. Then, noticing my expression, everything okay? I forced a smile. Just fine. Have a good day, Edward. As I walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had to change. The man I married was slipping away, replaced by someone I barely recognized. And the scariest part? A small voice inside me wondered if that might not be such a bad thing after all. I was in the middle of a crucial work presentation when my phone buzzed incessantly. Ignoring it, I focused on my clients. As soon as the meeting ended, I checked my messages. 15 missed calls from Travis. My heart raced as I dialed him back. Sam, finally. Travis's voice was strained. It's Mom. Dad, he's gone. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Oh, Travis, I'm so sorry. What happened? Heart attack. I'm at the hospital now. Can you come? I rushed to the hospital, finding Travis slumped in a waiting room chair. His eyes were red-rimmed, his usual charm replaced by raw grief. I held him as he sobbed, my own heart aching for his loss. Days blurred into weeks as we helped Mabel with funeral arrangements and settling affairs. Travis threw himself into taking care of his mother, spending more and more time at her house. One evening, as I was heating up another solo dinner, Travis called. Hey, babe, I'm staying at Mom's again tonight. I sighed, frustration bubbling up. Travis, it's been 3 weeks. When are you coming home? Sam, she needs me. You understand, right? I bit back a retort. Of course. It's just, I miss you. There was a pause. I miss you too. Look, why don't we bring Mom to stay with us for a while? It'll be easier on everyone. My stomach dropped. Stay with us? For how long? Just until she's back on her feet. A couple of weeks, tops. I wanted to protest, but couldn't find the words. Okay, I said finally, if you think it's best. The next day, Travis arrived with Mabel and several suitcases. I plastered on a smile, helping them settle in. That night, as we lay in bed, I whispered, Travis, are you sure about this? Our apartment's not that big. He turned to me, his expression hard. She's my mother, Sam. Where else is she supposed to go? I fell silent, the distance between us feeling wider than ever. Days turned into weeks, and Mabel showed no signs of leaving. She rearranged our kitchen, criticized my cooking, and monopolized the TV with her favorite shows. Travis seemed oblivious to my growing frustration. One evening, I came home to find Mabel had redecorated our living room. Surprise, she exclaimed. Doesn't it look so much better now? I stared at the frilly curtains and doilies covering every surface. Mabel, you can't just change our home without asking. Her face fell. I was only trying to help. Travis said it was fine. Did he now? I muttered, marching to our bedroom where Travis was lounging. Hey, babe, he said, not looking up from his phone. Travis, we need to talk about your mother. Travis, he sighed. What about her? She's taking over our home, and you're letting her. Travis sat up, frowning. She's going through a tough time, Sam. Can't you be more understanding? Understanding? I exploded. I've been nothing but understanding. But this is our home, Travis. Our life. When is she leaving? A look of surprise crossed his face. Leaving? Sam, she can't go back to that empty house. She's staying here. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. For how long? Travis shrugged. As long as she needs. I stared at him, disbelief turning to anger. And when were you planning on discussing this with me? Your wife? I didn't think I needed your permission to help my own mother, Travis snapped. It's not about permission, it's about respect, I shouted. This affects both of us, Travis. Or, have you forgotten we're supposed to be partners? Travis stood up, his face thunderous. You know what? I can't deal with this right now. I'm going out. As he stormed out, I sank onto the bed, tears of frustration streaming down my face. This wasn't the life I had signed up for. Something had to give, and I was terrified it might be me. I stared at the glossy brochure in my hands, my heart racing with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The luxury apartment complex looked like a dream come true, spacious rooms, a state-of-the-art kitchen, and a breathtaking view of the city skyline. What do you think, babe? Travis asked, his eyes gleaming with enthusiasm. This could be our fresh start. I hesitated. It's beautiful, but Travis, can we afford this? With your mom living with us and our current expenses. He waved off my concerns. Sam, this is an investment in our future. We deserve this after everything we've been through. I couldn't deny the allure of a new beginning, a chance to escape the cramped quarters we'd been sharing with Mabel. How would we manage the down payment? Travis's smile widened. That's the best part. I've found a way to make it work. We just need to sign the papers, and it's ours. Against my better judgment, I found myself nodding. Okay, let's do it. The next day, we met with the real estate agent. As we went through the paperwork, a detail caught my eye. Wait, why is only my name on the loan application? Travis squeezed my hand. It's just a formality, Sam. My credit isn't great right now because of some business investments. But don't worry, we're in this together. I frowned, a knot forming in my stomach. I don't know, Travis. This is a huge commitment. Do you trust me? He asked, his eyes locking with mine. I swallowed hard. Of course, but then trust me on this. It's the smart move, I promise. Against the screaming protests of my intuition, I signed the papers. Travis's triumphant grin should have been reassuring, but instead, it sent a chill down my spine. Weeks later, we moved into our new apartment. As I unpacked boxes in our gleaming kitchen, Mabel shuffled in, her face pinched with disapproval. I don't know why we had to move, she grumbled. Our old place was just fine. I bit back a retort. This place has more space for all of us, Mabel. You'll get used to it. She harumphed and wandered off. I sighed, wondering for the 1000th time when she'd return to her own home. That evening, as Travis and I sat on our new balcony, I broached the subject. Travis, have you talked to your mom about her plans? He tensed. What do you mean? Well, we moved here for a fresh start, right? I thought maybe she'd be ready to go back to her place soon. Travis's expression darkened. Sam, we've been over this. Mom needs us right now. But for how long? I pressed. It's been months and she's showing no signs of leaving. Because she's not going to leave, Travis snapped. This is her home now, too. I felt like I'd been doused in ice water. What? When did we decide this? I decided it, he said firmly. She's my mother, Sam. Where else is she supposed to go? But Travis, this apartment, the loan, it's all in my name. We can't afford. He cut me off. We'll make it work. You're being selfish, Sam. I thought you were better than this. As he stormed off, leaving me alone on the balcony, the full weight of my situation crashed down on me. I was trapped, financially responsible for a home I couldn't afford, living with a mother-in-law who'd never leave, and married to a man I barely recognized anymore. My phone buzzed with a text. It was Edward. Hey neighbor, noticed you moved. Everything okay? I stared at the message. tears welling in my eyes. In that moment, I realized I had a choice to make. I could continue down this path of misery, or I could fight back. But fighting back meant admitting that my marriage, my life, everything I'd built, it was all crumbling around me. With shaking hands, I typed a reply to Edward. "No, everything is not okay. Can we talk?" I stared at the stack of bills on the kitchen counter, my hands shaking. The mortgage payment was due in 3 days, and our account was nearly empty. Again, I took a deep breath and dialed Travis's number. "Hey, babe," he answered, his voice cheerful. "What's up?" "Travis, we need to talk about the mortgage," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's due soon, and we're short." Again, there was a pause. Oh, right. Listen, can you cover it this month? I've got some big deals in the works, but they haven't come through yet. I felt my blood pressure rising. "Travis, I've been covering it for the past 3 months. This was supposed to be our dream home, remember? Our shared responsibility." I know, he said, his tone dismissive, "but you're doing so well at work, and I'm still trying to get my business off the ground. It's just temporary, I promise." Before I could respond, I heard Mabel's voice in the background. "Travis, dear, are we still going shopping later?" My jaw clenched. "Is that your mother? Are you taking her shopping while we can't even pay our mortgage?" "Sam, don't start," Travis warned. "Look, I've got to go. We'll figure it out, okay? Love you." The line went dead. I stared at the phone in disbelief, then slumped into a chair, fighting back tears. A knock at the door startled me. I opened it to find Edward, holding a basket of muffins. "Hey, neighbor," he said with a warm smile. "Thought you could use a pick-me-up." I must have looked worse than I thought because his expression quickly turned to concern. "Samantha, what's wrong?" Before I knew it, I was spilling everything. The financial strain, Travis's irresponsibility, Mabel's constant presence. Edward listened patiently, his kind eyes never leaving mine. "I'm so sorry you're going through this," he said when I finished. "Have you considered talking to a financial advisor? Or maybe a lawyer?" I shook my head. "I can't afford either right now. And besides, Travis would never agree to it." Edward frowned. "Samantha, this isn't just about Travis anymore. You need to protect yourself." His words hit me hard. I'd been so focused on keeping our marriage afloat that I'd neglected my own well-being. Just then, Travis and Mabel burst through the door, laden with shopping bags. Travis froze when he saw Edward. "What's going on here?" "Edward just stopped by to say hello," I said quickly. "Thanks for the muffins, Edward. I'll see you around." After Edward left, Travis rounded on me. What was he doing here? "He's our neighbor, Travis. He was being friendly." Travis scoffed. "A little too friendly, if you ask me." I felt something snap inside me. "Oh, that's rich coming from you. Where were you all day? Shopping, while I'm here trying to figure out how to pay our bills." "Don't be dramatic, Sam," Travis said, rolling his eyes. "I told you I'll handle it." "When?" I demanded. "When are you going to start acting like a responsible adult?" Mabel chimed in, her voice shrill. "Don't you dare speak to my son that way, after everything he's done for you. Enough!" "No," I shouted, surprising even myself. "I can't do this anymore. I'm drowning here, Travis. I need help." Travis's face hardened. "What are you saying?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I'm saying that things need to change, now. Either we go to couples counseling and financial planning, or what?" Travis challenged. The words left my mouth before I could stop them. "Or I'm done. I'll file for divorce." The silence that followed was deafening. Travis stared at me, shock and anger warring on his face. Mabel gasped dramatically, clutching her pearls. In that moment, looking at their stunned faces, I realized I'd reached a crossroads. The life I'd built with Travis, the future I'd imagined, it was all hanging by a thread. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep holding on. "Your choice, Travis," I said quietly. "What's it going to be?" I paced our living room, anxiety gnawing at my insides. It had been 2 days since my ultimatum to Travis, and he'd barely spoken me since. The tension in our apartment was suffocating. The front door opened and Travis walked in. My heart raced as I searched his face for any sign of what he'd decided. "Sam, we need to talk," he said, his voice unnervingly calm. I nodded, bracing myself. "Okay. What have you decided?" Travis took a deep breath. "I want a divorce." The words hit me like a physical blow. Despite everything, I hadn't truly believed he'd choose this. "What, Travis? I didn't mean—" "I know what you meant," he interrupted. But it made me realize something. This isn't working, Sam. It hasn't been for a long time. I felt like I was drowning. But we can fix this. Counseling, like I suggested. It's too late for that, Travis said, his eyes not quite meeting mine. There's someone else. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Someone else, I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. Travis nodded, looking almost relieved to have it out. Her name is Stella. We've been seeing each other for... How long is a while? A while, I demanded, anger starting to replace the shock. He hesitated. About 8 months. 8 months. The timeline hit me like a truck. Since before we moved here, before you convinced me to take out that loan... Travis at least had the decency to look ashamed. I'm sorry, Sam. I never meant for it to happen. But Stella and we connect in a way you and I never did. I laughed bitterly. And let me guess, she doesn't mind your mother living with you? Actually, Travis said, straightening up, Mom's moving in with Stella and me. We've found a place that's perfect for the 3 of us. The casual way he said it, like he was discussing weekend plans, made something snap inside. Snap inside me. Perfect for the 3 of you? What about me, Travis? What about the life we built, the mortgage that's in my name? He shrugged, and in that moment I saw him clearly for the first time. The charm, the promises, it had all been a facade. You're doing well at work. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Figure it out, I repeated, incredulous. You saddle me with a mortgage I can't afford, cheat on me for months, and now you're just walking away? I've already spoken to a lawyer, Travis said, pulling out a folder. These are the divorce papers. It'll be easier if you just sign them now. I stared at the folder, feeling like I was in some surreal nightmare. You want me to sign right now? Just like that? It's for the best, Sam, he said, his tone patronizing. A clean break. My hand shook as I took the folder. I flipped through the pages, the legal jargon swimming before my eyes. One phrase jumped out at me. The wife agrees to assume all financial responsibilities related to the marital home. You're leaving me with all the debt? I asked, my voice rising. After everything you've done? Travis had the audacity to look annoyed. Come on, Sam. Don't make this difficult. It's a fair deal. I looked at him. This man I thought I knew. This man I had loved. In his eyes I saw nothing but cold indifference. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I meant nothing to him. I never had. Get out, I whispered. What? Get out, I screamed, throwing the folder at him. Get out of my house, you lying, cheating bastard. Travis backed away, hands raised. Fine. I'll give you some time to calm down, but I'll be back for those papers, Sam. This is happening whether you like it or not. As the door slammed behind him, I collapsed onto the floor, sobs racking my body. My world had just imploded, and I was left alone in the ruins, drowning in debt and betrayal. Through my tears, I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked broken, defeated. But as I held her gaze, I felt something stir deep inside. A spark of defiance, of rage. Travis thought he could walk all over me and get away with it. He was wrong. Dead wrong. I stared at the empty spaces in my apartment, the silence deafening. Travis had moved out yesterday, taking Mabel with him. The divorce papers lay unsigned on the coffee table, mocking me. My phone buzzed. Another text from Travis. Sign the papers, Sam. My lawyer's getting impatient. I threw the phone across the room, watching it bounce off the couch. The anger that had been simmering for days suddenly boiled over. I grabbed my keys and stormed out, needing to escape the suffocating walls. As I reached the elevator, I ran into Edward. His concerned eyes met mine. Samantha, are you okay? I laughed bitterly. Oh, I'm fantastic. My cheating ex-husband has left me with a mountain of debt and run off with his mistress. I'm living the dream. Edward's face softened. I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do? I was about to brush him off when an idea struck me. Actually, yes. You're in real estate, right? I need your help. An hour later, we sat in a cafe, poring over documents. Edward's expression grew grimmer with each page. Samantha, this is worse than I thought. The loan terms are predatory and the property value is inflated. Travis really screwed you over. The confirmation of Travis's betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. What can I do? Edward hesitated. There might be a way, but it's not exactly legal. I leaned forward, desperation overriding my usual caution. Tell me. As Edward outlined his plan, a part of me recoiled at the idea. But a larger part, the part consumed by rage and hurt, latched onto it like a lifeline. That night, I sat at my computer, fingers flying over the keyboard. Years of managing Travis's accounts gave me intimate knowledge of his finances. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for: hidden accounts, shady transactions, evidence of fraud. My phone buzzed again. Travis. Where are the signed papers, Sam? Don't make this difficult. I smiled grimly, typing out a response. We need to talk. Meet me at the cafe tomorrow at 2 p.m. The next day, I arrived early, setting up my laptop. My heart raced as I saw Travis saunter in, his usual cocky grin in place. Finally come to your senses? He asked, sliding into the seat across from me. I took a deep breath. Not exactly. I've been doing some digging, Travis. Care to explain these? I turned the laptop towards him, showing the evidence of his financial misdeeds. The color drained from his face. How did you? Doesn't matter. I cut him off. What matters is what happens next. You have two choices. One, you take on the mortgage and all associated debts. Or two, I turn this over to the authorities. Travis's eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. You'd go down with me. Maybe, I conceded. But I have nothing left to lose thanks to you. Can you say the same? For a moment, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. Then his face hardened. Nice try, Sam. But you forget. I know you. You don't have the guts to go through with this. He stood up, looming over me. Sign the papers, or I'll make your life a living hell. You think you're struggling now? Just wait. As he stormed out, leaving me trembling in my seat, I realized he was right. The old Samantha wouldn't have the courage to follow through. But I wasn't that woman anymore. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I'd memorized earlier. Hello? Is this the FBI's Financial Crimes Division? I'd like to report a case of fraud. As I began detailing Travis's crimes, I felt a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. There was no going back now. I was all in, for better or worse. The game had changed, and this time I was determined to win. My heart pounded as I stood outside the quaint suburban house. This was it, the moment of truth. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. A pretty blonde woman answered, her smile faltering as she saw me. Can I help you? Are you Stella? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. She nodded, confusion evident on her face. I'm Samantha, Travis's wife. The color drained from Stella's face. I don't understand. Travis said he was divorced. Not quite, I said, my anger rising. Is he here? As if on cue, Travis appeared behind Stella. His eyes widened in shock. Sam? What are you doing here? I pushed past them into the house, Stella too stunned to stop me. We need to talk, all of us. In the living room, I saw Mabel looking bewildered. Samantha, what's going on? I turned to face them all. It's time for the truth to come out. Travis, why don't you start by explaining to Stella how you're still married? Or maybe you'd like to tell her about the fraudulent financial dealings I uncovered. Travis's face contorted with rage. You had no right. I had every right, I shouted. You left me drowning in debt, Travis. Debt you tricked me into taking on. Stella's voice was barely a whisper. Is this true? Travis's charm kicked in, his voice smooth. Baby, it's not what it sounds like. Sam's just bitter. Don't you dare, I cut him off. I turned to Stella. I have proof of everything, the affairs, the fraud, all of it. I pulled out my phone, showing her the documents I'd gathered. Stella's face crumpled as she scrolled through, the evidence undeniable. How could you? She whispered to Travis. Travis's facade finally cracked. I can explain, but there was no explaining away the truth. As Stella and Mabel absorbed the reality of Travis's deceptions, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. So what now? Travis asked, his voice hollow. You've ruined everything. Are you happy? I looked at him, this man I once loved, and felt nothing but pity. This isn't about being happy, Travis. The FBI is already investigating your finances. You're going to face the consequences of your actions. Mabel let out a strangled sob. My boy. What have you done? I turned to her, my voice softening. Mabel, I'm sorry, but you can't stay here anymore. I've arranged for you to move to a nice assisted living facility. Travis will cover the costs. It's the least he can do. Travis's head snapped up. You can't do that. Actually, I can, I said, my voice firm. It's all part of the deal I worked out with the prosecutor. You take responsibility for your actions or you face the full extent of the law. The fight seemed to drain out of Travis. He slumped onto the couch, head in his hands. Stella, who had been silent, suddenly spoke up. I want in on this deal. He lied to me too. Used me. I nodded, a spark of understanding passing between us. Of course, we'll make sure he pays alimony to both of us. As the reality of his situation sank in, Travis looked up at me, his eyes pleading. Sam, please, we can work this out. I'll do anything. For a moment, I remembered the charming man I fell in love with, but that man was gone, if he ever truly existed. It's too late for that, Travis, I said softly. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them. I turned to leave, feeling lighter than I had in years. At the door, I paused and looked back at the chaos I was leaving behind. Stella was crying, Mabel was praying, and Travis looked broken, but I felt no satisfaction, no joy in their pain. Only relief that it was finally over. As I stepped out into the sunlight, I took a deep breath. For the first time in years, I felt free. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face it, on my own terms. I pulled out my phone and dialed Edward's number. It's done, I said when he answered. Thank you for everything. You did it, Samantha, he replied, his voice warm. I'm proud of you. As I hung up, I smiled. The shadows of betrayal were finally lifting, and I was stepping into the light of a new day, stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next. The shrill ring of my phone pierced the quiet of my kitchen. I wiped my hands on my apron and answered, expecting to hear Rachel's cheerful voice. Instead, my daughter's sobs crackled through the speaker. Mom, I can't stand living here anymore, Rachel wailed. They treat me like a stranger and won't let me visit Dad. My heart clenched. Sweetheart, slow down. What's going on? Aunt Linda and Uncle Gary, she hiccuped. They're awful. I feel like a prisoner. I gripped the counter, steadying myself. What do you mean they won't let you visit your father? They say he's a bad influence, Rachel sniffled, that I shouldn't waste my time with him. Mom, I want to come home. Of course, honey, I said, my mind racing. We'll figure this out, I promise. As soon as we hung up, I dialed Robert's number. My husband answered on the third ring, his voice gruff. Evelyn? What's wrong? It's Rachel, I said. She just called hysterical. Did you know Linda and Gary have been keeping her from seeing you? Robert sighed heavily. Come on, Ev, you know how dramatic teenagers can be. This isn't drama, Robert, I snapped. Your sister is manipulating our daughter, again. Now, hold on, he started, but I cut him off. No, you hold on. Our daughter is hurting and you're defending Linda. When are you going to put our family first? The line went quiet for a moment. Let me talk to Linda, Robert finally said. I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding. I laughed bitterly. Oh, I'm sure there has been, but not the kind you're thinking. After hanging up, I paced the kitchen, my mind whirling. Linda had always been a thorn in my side, but this was a new low. I thought back to the day Rachel announced she was moving in with her aunt and uncle. Linda had been so sickeningly sweet, promising to guide Rachel through her college years. The doorbell startled me from my thoughts. I opened the front door to find my best friend, Patricia, holding a bottle of wine. I could hear you fuming from down the street, she said with a wry smile. Thought you might need this. I ushered her inside, grateful for the company. As we settled on the couch, I filled Patricia in on Rachel's call and Robert's dismissive response. Patricia's eyes widened. That witch, she muttered. And Robert's still making excuses for her? I nodded, taking a long sip of wine. I don't know what to do, Pat. I can't just sit here while Linda poisons Rachel against us. Then don't, Patricia said firmly. Fight back. You've let Linda walk all over you for years. It's time to show her you're not going to take it anymore. I stared at my friend, a mix of fear and determination bubbling up inside me. You're right, I said slowly. But how? Patricia leaned forward, her eyes glinting. We start digging. Linda's bound to have skeletons in her closet. Find them and use them. As we brainstormed, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Aunt Linda took my phone, using Gary's iPad. Please help. My hands shook as I showed Patricia the message. That's it, I said, standing up. I'm going over there right now. Patricia grabbed my arm. Wait, Evelyn, we need a plan. Charging in there will only make things worse. I sank back onto the couch, deflated. You're right, but I can't just abandon Rachel. We won't, Patricia assured me. But we need to be smart about this. Linda's played this game for years. It's time to beat her at it. As we plotted our next move, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a long, painful battle. But for Rachel's sake, I was ready to fight. Linda had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I marched into Robert's study, determined to make him see reason. He looked up from his laptop, his brow furrowing at my expression. "We need to talk about Rachel," I said, my voice tight with frustration. Robert sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Evelyn, I told you it's just teenage drama. Linda wouldn't." "Stop defending her!" I snapped. "Our daughter is miserable, and you're brushing it off like it's nothing." "You're overreacting," Robert said, his tone patronizing. "Rachel's always been sensitive. She'll adjust." I felt my temper flare. "Overreacting? Robert, they're controlling her every move. How can you not see what's happening?" Before he could respond, my phone buzzed. It was Rachel, using Gary's iPad again. My heart raced as I read her message. "Uncle Gary told me you and Dad are planning to divorce. Is it true?" I showed Robert the text, watching the color drain from his face. "Still think I'm overreacting?" I asked coldly. Robert's jaw clenched. "I'll talk to Gary. This is getting out of hand." "Getting out of hand?" I laughed bitterly. "It's been out of hand since the day Rachel moved in with them. Why can't you stand up to your sister for once?" "You don't understand," Robert muttered, avoiding my gaze. "It's complicated." "Then explain it to me," I demanded. "What hold does Linda have over you?" Robert's silence spoke volumes. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized there was more to this story than I knew. "Robert," I said slowly, "what aren't you telling me?" He opened his mouth to respond when Rachel burst through the front door, tears streaming down her face. We rushed to meet her in the hallway. "Rachel, honey, what happened?" I asked, pulling her into a hug. Between sobs, she choked out, I heard Aunt Linda on the phone. She was talking about Dad, about some woman named Melissa." I felt Robert stiffen beside me. "What about Melissa?" he asked, his voice strained. Rachel looked up at him, her eyes wide. She said you had an affair with her, that you have another kid." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I stumbled back, staring at Robert in disbelief. "Is this true?" Robert's face crumpled. "Evelyn, I can explain." I cut him off, my voice ice cold. "Just don't." Rachel looked between us, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I shouldn't have said anything." I pulled her close, stroking her hair. "No, sweetheart, you did the right thing. This isn't your fault." Robert reached out, but I flinched away. "Both of you, just give me a minute," I said, retreating to the kitchen. My hands shook as I gripped the counter, trying to process this bombshell. An affair, another child. How long had Linda known? How long had she been using this to manipulate Robert? I heard hushed voices from the hallway, then footsteps approaching. Robert appeared in the doorway, his face a mask of guilt and fear. "Evelyn," he began, "I know I've made mistakes, but..." "Mistakes?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "You call this a mistake? How long, Robert? How long have you been lying to me?" He flinched at my words. "It was years ago, before Rachel was born. I never meant for any of this to happen." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "And Linda's known all this time, hasn't she? That's why you always take her side. She's been blackmailing you." Robert's silence was all the confirmation I needed. I felt a surge of determination, tinged with rage. "Well," I said, straightening up, "it ends now. I won't let Linda use this to control our family anymore. And you," I pointed at Robert, "you have a lot of explaining to do. To me and to your daughter." As I brushed past him to comfort Rachel, I realized this was just the beginning. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready for war. The annual Parker family barbecue was always a tense affair, but this year, the air crackled with unspoken accusations and barely concealed hostility. I stood at the grill, flipping burgers with more force than necessary, my eyes constantly darting to Linda's smug face across the yard. Rachel huddled near me, her eyes downcast. "Mom, I don't want to be here," she whispered. "I know, sweetie," I murmured. "We'll leave soon, I promise." Robert approached, his face a mask of forced cheerfulness. "Everything okay over here?" Before I could answer, Linda sauntered over, Gary trailing behind her like an obedient puppy. "Oh, Robert," she cooed. "I was just telling everyone how proud we are of Rachel. She's become such a wonderful little housekeeper at our place." I felt Rachel stiffen beside me. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. Linda's smile was saccharine. "Well, she's just so good at keeping things tidy. Dishes, laundry, you name it. We hardly have to lift a finger anymore." "That's not Rachel's job," I snapped. "She's there to focus on her studies, not be your maid." "Now, Evelyn," Linda skied, "don't be so sensitive. Rachel needs to learn responsibility. Responsibility? I echoed, my temper flaring. Is that what you call exploiting my daughter? Robert stepped between us. Ladies, please, this isn't the time or place. I rounded on him. And when is the time, Robert? When are you going to stand up for your daughter? The gathering had gone quiet, all eyes on our little group. Linda's smile never wavered. Your daughter is just like you, Evelyn, always overreacting. Something inside me snapped. Overreacting? You've been manipulating and controlling Rachel since the day she moved in. You've restricted her allowance, cut her off from her friends, and now I find out you've been using her as free labor? Linda's eyes narrowed. You ungrateful little... That's enough, Robert's voice boomed across the yard. For a moment, I thought he was finally taking our side, but then he turned to me, his expression cold. Evelyn, you're making a scene. Maybe you should take Rachel home. I stared at him in disbelief. You're still defending her? After everything? Rachel tugged at my sleeve. Mom, please, can we just go? I nodded, my heart breaking for my daughter. As we turned to leave, Linda called out, Oh, Rachel, dear, don't forget you promised to help me with the church fundraiser next weekend. Rachel froze. I can't, she stammered. I have plans with Mom. Linda's eyes glittered. But you promised, dear, you wouldn't want to disappoint the whole congregation, would you? I saw the conflict on Rachel's face and made a split-second decision. Actually, Linda, I said, my voice steady, Rachel won't be available. She's moving back home, today. The silence that followed was deafening. Linda's face contorted with rage. You can't do that, she hissed. Watch me, I retorted, putting an arm around Rachel's shoulders. As we walked away, I heard Linda's shrill voice behind us. Robert, are you going to let her do this? After everything we've done for you? I didn't wait to hear Robert's response. In the car, Rachel burst into tears. I'm sorry, Mom. I should have told you sooner about everything. I squeezed her hand. This isn't your fault, sweetheart. We're going to fix this, I promise. As we drove home, my mind raced. I knew this was far from over. Linda wouldn't let Rachel go without a fight, and I had a sinking feeling that Robert would once again side with his sister. But looking at Rachel's tear-stained face, I felt a fierce determination well up inside me. No matter what it took, I would protect my daughter and expose Linda's manipulations. The gloves were off, and I was ready for battle. The moment Robert walked through the door that evening, I was ready for him. Rachel had gone to bed early, exhausted from the day's events, leaving us alone to confront the elephant in the room. We need to talk, I said, my voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. Robert sighed, loosening his tie. Evelyn, if this is about the barbecue... This is about everything, I cut him off. Your sister, your daughter, your complete inability to stand up for your family. His face hardened. That's not fair. You know how complicated things are with Linda. Complicated? I laughed bitterly. What I know is that our daughter was miserable living with her, and you did nothing. Linda was trying to help, Robert argued weakly. I felt my temper flare. Help? By treating Rachel like a servant? By cutting her off from her friends and family? You're exaggerating, he muttered, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. Am I? I challenged. Then explain to me why you stood there and let Linda humiliate me in front of everyone, why you're always taking her side over ours. Robert's shoulders slumped. It's not that simple, Evelyn. Linda, she knows things. About me, about our family, things that could destroy us if they came out. I felt a chill run down my spine. What things, Robert? What could possibly justify letting your sister treat your daughter this way? He opened his mouth to respond when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Linda. You think you've won? Think again. Rachel comes back, or everyone learns Robert's dirty little secret. I showed Robert the message, watching the color drain from his face. What secret, Robert? I demanded. What does she have on you? He collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. I made a mistake years ago. Before Rachel was born, there was another woman, and there's a child. Linda's the only one who knows. The room seemed to spin. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. You have another child? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Robert nodded miserably. I've been paying child support in secret all these years. Linda found out, and she's been using it to control me ever since. Rage and betrayal warred within me. How could you keep this from me? From Rachel? I was afraid, he admitted. Afraid of losing you, of hurting Rachel. Linda swore she'd keep it secret if I did what she wanted. And what she wanted was to control our lives, I said bitterly, to drive a wedge between us and Rachel. Robert reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Evelyn, please. I know I've made terrible mistakes, but I love you and Rachel more than anything. We can fix this. I stared at him, seeing him clearly for the first time in years. A man torn between loyalty to his sister and love for his family, paralyzed by fear and guilt. You're right, I said slowly. We can fix this, but not by giving in to Linda's blackmail. Robert's eyes widened. What are you saying? I straightened up, a plan forming in my mind. I'm saying it's time we take control of our own story. We tell Rachel the truth, all of it, and then we confront Linda together. But the scandal, the family. The family is already in shambles, I interrupted. At least this way we're being honest. It's the only way to break Linda's hold over us. Robert looked terrified, but I saw a glimmer of hope in his eyes. You'd stand by me, even after learning this? I took a deep breath. I'm furious with you, Robert, but I love our family too much to let Linda destroy it. We'll deal with your betrayal, but first we need to unite against the real enemy. As I spoke the words, I felt a surge of determination. The path ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in years, I felt like we had a fighting chance. Okay, Robert said quietly. Let's do it. Let's tell Rachel everything. I nodded, steeling myself for the conversation that would change our family forever. Whatever came next, we would face it together. The morning after our confrontation, Robert and I sat Rachel down to tell her everything. Her face crumpled as Robert confessed to his affair and the existence of her half-sibling. I held her hand tightly, my heart breaking as I watched her world shift beneath her feet. Why now? Rachel asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why tell me this after all these years? I took a deep breath. Because Aunt Linda has been using this information to control us, sweetheart, and we're not going to let her do that anymore. Rachel's eyes flashed with anger. So that's why you always let her walk all over us, Dad? Because you were afraid of your own mistakes? Robert nodded, shame etched across his face. I'm so sorry, Rachel. I thought I was protecting our family, but I was just making things worse. As we talked through the implications, my phone buzzed incessantly. I ignored it, focusing on comforting Rachel. But when I finally checked, my blood ran cold. Linda had been busy. There were messages from family members, friends, even our neighbors, all of them expressing shock, disappointment, and in some cases outright disgust. Linda had spread the news of Robert's affair far and wide, twisting the narrative to paint me as the villain who had torn the family apart by overreacting to an ancient indiscretion. She's turned everyone against us, I said, my voice shaking with fury and disbelief. Rachel grabbed my phone, scrolling through the messages with wide eyes. How could she do this? Doesn't she care about how this affects me? Linda only cares about control, Robert said bitterly. She's always been that way, even when we were kids. I stood up, pacing the room as my mind raced. We need to fight back. We can't let her narrative be the only one out there. Just then, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Patricia, her face etched with concern. Evelyn, I came as soon as I heard. Are you okay? I ushered her in, grateful for a friendly face. As we filled Patricia in on the full story, including Robert's confession, her expression hardened. This ends now, Patricia declared. Linda's gone too far. We need to expose her for the manipulative snake she is. Rachel, who had been quiet, suddenly spoke up. I want to help. I'm tired of being a pawn in Aunt Linda's games. I looked at my daughter, seeing a determination in her eyes that mirrored my own. Are you sure, sweetheart? This could get ugly. She nodded firmly. I'm sure, Mom, it's time we stood up for ourselves. As we began to strategize, another text came through. This time it was from Gary, Linda's husband. Evelyn, we need to talk. Linda's gone too far. I have information that could help you. I showed the message to the others, a mix of hope and suspicion coursing through me. Could this be the break we needed, or another of Linda's traps? It could be a setup, Robert warned. Or it could be our chance to turn the tables, Patricia countered. I looked at each of their faces, Robert's guilt-ridden but determined, Rachel's fierce and ready for battle, Patricia's supportive and strategic. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. I'm meeting Gary, I announced. But I'm not going alone. We're in this together now. As we prepared to face whatever Gary had in store, I felt a shift in the air. The fear and shame that had clouded our family for so long was lifting, replaced by a united front against Linda's tyranny. "Whatever happens," I said, looking at my family and friend, "we face it as one. Linda's reign of manipulation ends today." With those words, we stepped out into the uncertain future, ready to reclaim our lives and our family's honor. The battle ahead would be tough, but for the first time in years I felt hope blooming in my chest. We had the truth on our side, and together we were stronger than any lie Linda could spin. The cafe where we agreed to meet Gary was bustling with the lunch crowd, but I barely noticed the noise. My heart pounded as I sat with Patricia, Robert, and Rachel, waiting for Linda's husband to arrive. "Are you sure about this?" Robert asked for the 100th time. I nodded, my jaw set. "We need to know what Gary has to say. It might be our only chance to turn the tables on Linda." Rachel squeezed my hand. "We're with you, Mom, no matter what." Just then Gary walked in, looking nervous and disheveled. He slid into the booth, his eyes darting around as if expecting Linda to appear at any moment. "Thank you for meeting us," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You said you had information?" Gary nodded, pulling out a USB drive. "Linda's gone too far this time. I can't be part of it anymore. This drive contains financial records, emails, everything that shows how Linda's been manipulating the family for years." My hands shook as I took the drive. "Why are you doing this, Gary? Why now?" He looked down, shame etched across his face. "I should have done it years ago. But Linda, she has a way of making you feel like you have no choice. But when she started messing with Rachel's future, I knew I had to do something." "What do you mean, messing with my future?" Rachel asked, her voice sharp. Gary sighed heavily. "Linda's been siphoning money from your grandfather's estate, money that was meant for your education, Rachel. She's been using it to fund her own lifestyle and to keep people in line." The shock around the table was palpable. Patricia was the first to recover. "We need to go through those files immediately. If what Gary's saying is true, we have more than enough to expose Linda's manipulations." As we prepared to leave, Gary grabbed my arm. "Be careful, Evelyn. Linda's desperate. She knows she's losing control, and that makes her dangerous." I nodded, a chill running down my spine. "Thank you, Gary, for everything." Back at home, we huddled around my laptop as Patricia, tech-savvy as ever, combed through the files on the drive. With each document she opened, the depth of Linda's deceit became clearer. "Look at this," Patricia said, pointing to an email chain. "Linda's been blackmailing half the family. She's got dirt on everyone, and she's been using it to keep them in line." Rachel gasped as she read over Patricia's shoulder. "She even tried to sabotage my college applications. How could she do this?" I felt a rage building inside me, hot and fierce, because she's a control freak who can't stand the idea of anyone challenging her power. As we delved deeper into Linda's web of lies, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "I know what you're doing. Meet me at the old boathouse in an hour, or everything you care about goes up in flames." I showed the others, watching their faces pale. "It has to be Linda," Robert said. "She must have found out about Gary." "You can't go," Rachel pleaded. "It's too dangerous." But I knew I had no choice. This was our chance to end Linda's reign of terror once and for all. "I have to," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "But I'm not going alone. We face this together, remember?" As we piled into the car, heading towards the confrontation that would change everything, I felt a mix of fear and determination. Linda had pushed us to the brink, but we were pushing back. Whatever happened at that boathouse, I knew one thing for certain. Our family would never be the same again. The old boathouse loomed before us, dark and foreboding against the setting sun. As we approached, I gripped the USB drive in my pocket, our secret weapon against Linda's years of manipulation. This was it, the moment of truth. With a deep breath, I pushed open the creaking door, ready to face whatever Linda had in store for us. As we entered the dimly lit boathouse, my heart pounded in my chest. Linda stood in the center, her face a mask of fury and desperation. Gary hovered behind her, looking torn and afraid. Well, Linda sneered. "The whole gang's here. How touching." I stepped forward, gripping the USB drive in my pocket. "It's over, Linda. We know everything." She laughed, a brittle sound that sent chills down my spine. "You think you know everything? You have no idea what I'm capable of." Robert moved to stand beside me. Linda, please, this has gone on long enough. Let's talk about this like family. Family, Linda spat. You gave up the right to call me family when you chose her over me. She pointed at me, her eyes blazing with hatred. Rachel stepped forward, her voice trembling but determined. Aunt Linda, why? Why did you try to sabotage my future? For a moment, Linda's mask slipped, revealing a flicker of shame, but it was quickly replaced by cold anger. Because you're just like your mother, always taking what should have been mine. What are you talking about? I demanded. Linda's laugh was bitter. Oh, poor naive Evelyn. Did you really think Robert chose you? He was supposed to marry my best friend. I had it all planned out, but then you came along and ruined everything. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. I turned to Robert, searching his face for the truth. He looked stricken. Linda, that was years ago. I fell in love with Evelyn. It had nothing to do with your plans. Liar! Linda shrieked. She pulled out a gun, waving it wildly. You've all ruined everything, but I'm not going down alone. Time seemed to slow down. I saw Rachel's terrified face, Robert's protective stance, Patricia's hand reaching for her phone, and in that moment I knew what I had to do. Linda, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I have proof of everything you've done, the blackmail, the stolen money, all of it. I pulled out the USB drive. If anything happens to us, this information goes public. You'll lose everything. Linda's hand wavered, the gun shaking in her grip. You're bluffing. Am I? I took a step closer, my heart racing. You've spent years manipulating this family, Linda, but it ends now. We're not your puppets anymore. Gary suddenly moved, grabbing Linda's arm. She's right, Linda. It's over. Please, don't make this worse. For a tense moment, I thought Linda might pull the trigger anyway, but then, like a deflating balloon, all the fight seemed to leave her. The gun clattered to the floor, and she collapsed into sobs. As Gary comforted his wife, I turned to my family. Rachel threw herself into my arms, crying with relief. Robert embraced us both, whispering apologies and words of love. Patricia, ever practical, was already on the phone with the police. It's done, she mouthed to me over Rachel's shoulder. As we waited for the authorities to arrive, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. We had faced our demons and come out the other side. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still wounds to heal, trusts to rebuild. But for the first time in years, I felt hope blossoming in my chest. Linda's reign of terror was over. Our family had been tested, pushed to the brink, but we had survived. As I held my daughter and husband close, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. The sound of sirens in the distance signaled the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. As the blue lights flashed through the boathouse windows, I took a deep breath, ready to step into our new future. Scarred, but stronger for having weathered the storm. The weeks following the confrontation at the boathouse were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, family therapy sessions, and long, difficult conversations. Linda and Gary faced the consequences of their actions, both legally and within the family. As I watched them leave the courthouse after their sentencing, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. The Linda I once knew was gone, consumed by her own bitterness and jealousy. Our family gathered at our home for the first time since everything had come to light. The tension in the air was palpable as aunts, uncles, and cousins filed in, their faces a mix of confusion, hurt, and hope. I stood in the center of the living room, my heart pounding. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice shaky but determined. We've been through a lot as a family, and it's time we face the truth together. Over the next hour, with Robert and Rachel by my side, we laid bare the years of manipulation, the stolen money, and the web of lies Linda had spun. There were gasps of shock, tears of betrayal, and moments of stunned silence. We're not here to point fingers, Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. We're here to heal, to rebuild the trust that was broken. As the truth sank in, I saw a change come over our family. The walls of suspicion and resentment began to crumble, replaced by a tentative understanding. Aunt Margaret, Linda's staunchest supporter, approached me with tears in her eyes. Evelyn, I'm so sorry. We had no idea. Can you ever forgive us? I hugged her tightly, my own tears falling. There's nothing to forgive. We were all victims of Linda's manipulations. What matters now is that we move forward together. As the evening wore on, the atmosphere shifted. Stories were shared, old wounds acknowledged, and the first tentative steps toward reconciliation were taken. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension and awkward silences, but it was a start. Later that night, as the last of the family left, Robert, Rachel, and I sat together on the porch swing. The weight of the past weeks, months, and years seemed to lift slightly as we gazed at the stars. "Mom," Rachel said softly, "I'm proud of us, for standing up to Aunt Linda, for telling the truth." I squeezed her hand. "Me too, sweetheart. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary." Robert cleared his throat. "Evelyn, Rachel, I know I have a lot to make up for. My blindness to Linda's manipulations, my failure to protect our family. I'm so sorry. I promise to do better, to be the husband and father you both deserve." I looked at him, seeing the genuine remorse and love in his eyes. "It won't be easy," I said honestly. "We have a lot of trust to rebuild, but we'll do it together, day by day." Rachel leaned her head on my shoulder. "We've been through so much," she murmured. "Do you think we'll ever be okay?" I wrapped my arms around my daughter, pulling Robert closer too. "We will," I said, feeling a surge of hope in my chest. "We've been through the fire, and we've come out stronger. Together, we can overcome anything." As we sat there, our little family unit holding tight to each other, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still wounds to heal, trusts to mend, and a family to rebuild. But for the first time in a long time, I was excited for the future. Linda's shadow no longer loomed over us. We were free to write our own story, to build the kind of loving, supportive family we all deserved. And as I looked at Robert and Rachel, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them united. The night air was cool, filled with the promise of new beginnings. As we sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, I realized that this wasn't just an ending. It was a beautiful new start,